not be, let's say, in the master plan of the European Commission to bring on the table within the next month and years?
Joe McNamee from European Digital Rights. Joe McNamee, European Digital Rights. I'd just like to say I believe everything Mr. De Veen says always. 2 weeks ago, he stood up in the Commission. He said nobody has ever proposed 3 strikes at all in this context. Today, he says, OK, there is a footnote which does mention 3 strikes, or acknowledged it. So I believe him today, I believe him last week, and I'll believe him next week. The problem is that dynamic believing. I'm sure Mr. De Veen knows that in the rules of treaty interpretation, preparatory works have a legal significance. And if the footnote is there, and the footnote is subsequently deleted, if the only text that was there explaining what these policies were supposed to mean is cutting people off, then that will be the only interpretation open, regardless of whether this text is in the final document or not. And one final point that any of the MEPs could answer. Mr. De Veen thinks you're confused. You don't understand the resolution that you adopted, and he will save you from yourselves. When you said that the negotiations should be restricted to counterfeiting, you didn't understand that's what you were voting for, and the Commission is going to save you from yourselves, and they're going to continue on as before. In the unlikely possibility that you didn't really mean that, could you perhaps share this information with Mr. De Veen? Thank you.
Well, Mr. McNamee, I'm very happy you believe me and that you don't believe in myth. I said that nobody has ever asked the 3-strike rule to be compulsory in this treaty, and I stand by it. I said as well, yes, this is what I said. Well, we can, whatever, this is what I said. And I've said, as I've added, that if somebody were to propose it, we would oppose it. And I think you will have great difficulty proving me the contrary. I'm not sure I understood your resolution thing. I understand that you were taking some role of, I don't know, advocating something. I mean, I've never said anything against the resolution of the European Parliament. If this is what you're mentioning, I'm not even mentioning here. So I don't see where is your problem there. Shall I try perhaps as well? To Mrs. Lichtenberg at the same time, or?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So you ask about the commercial scale. You say that there is no interpretation. It is true, and it is deliberately so, because in Europe, in our legislation, there is no definition of the commercial scale. Why? Because of the history of negotiations, because some people want this, some people want that. Now, the result is that it's up to the judges to interpret these criteria, and it's not up to us, nor during these negotiations, to change that. If there is a will to change the EU law, well, there is a process for that, and it has to be decided by member states, Commission, and Parliament. But today we are bound by the existing legislation, and if we were to start defining commercial scale, we would be accused of going beyond the current law. So we cannot be accused of not going enough or going too far. Then you mentioned civil rights, which are very important, and we have, I think, I'm not sure we put it in writing, but we certainly mentioned that we didn't want, we mentioned that during the negotiations, that we didn't want anything to be changed on that, because we know it's a sensitive topic. We know it's not going to be the case, because there's not going to be change to the EU law. And last but not least, if you don't trust us, well, you will have the text anyway, so you can see it by yourself. Thanks. I hope so too.
Now we have the final round of questions, starting off with Baroness Ludford, Erika Mann, and then the lady. Next round, sorry, we're already late.
Yes, I I just wondered how we kind of arrived at this point and whether the Commission anticipated such a controversy, tried to take decisions which would have maximised support rather than maximised opposition, whether fundamental rights considerations were taken into account from the beginning. I mean, in a sense, I think it's very unfortunate because I think there would be considerable support for proper and reasonable enforcement of IP. I think a lot of us have sympathy for both the creative industries and obviously on things like medicines. Speaking as someone married to a type 1 diabetic, the thought that he could get counterfeit insulin is just too horrible to contemplate. And there's a lot of other people, obviously, who would be affected by pharmaceutical issues. So how come we've arrived at this point where there isn't broad public support, and for instance, what the Parliament is suggesting, limiting it to counterfeiting, or even to a narrow sort of agenda on IP. And what is happening, obviously, is that everyone is up in arms about the threat to internet freedom. I'm just wondering how we managed to blunder into this situation.
Mr. De Vigna, I'm wondering if you would agree from the Commission side and the Council certainly as well that you would give access to certain limited numbers of people which from broad range from industry and beyond industry of certainly under confidentiality rules, but would this be an option which you would consider and which you would regard as open? And my second is, by the way, I'm not sure in this case because you mentioned it's you use the same rules like in FTAs and WTO procedure in giving access the European Parliament to the documents. Does this mean that the Parliament, the chairman of the committee, and the coordinators of the Trade Committee had full access to all documents which are up negotiated right now, because that's the procedure?